Hello, here we are with Mookie Tenembaum, as you know, exploring his disillusionist philosophy through these videos and focusing on the misalgic theory that explains human behavior through aversion to suffering. Today, within this framework, we are going to discuss two very intertwined concepts, which are the concept of creativity and the concept of imagination. And of course, we are going to address creativity and imagination from a disillusion perspective to see what comes out of it.
Okay, first of all, let's make some let's get some ground rules about this conversation. There is no creativity without imagination. Do you agree?
True.
But there is a lot of imagination. In fact, the huge majority of imagination, I would say, that makes it, numbers are becoming almost all of it. It's not creativity. Okay.
No.
So when I imagine me going to the supermarket to buy myself cheese, I'm not being creative. If I think I'll go to the supermarket dressed as a dog, yes, and try to get people to give me a piece of meat for free, that will be creativity. But look at this case. Creativity is what? Anything that is out of the ordinary, anything that is disruptive, or is it anything that is disruptive in a utilitarian concept for the majority of people, or the majority possible of people, for the longest possible time? It's clear that my idea of getting dressed as a dog and getting a piece of meat from the supermarket is not something that society will be useful for it.
We might admit it's original, but I don't think anyone will say that's creative, right?
Great. Okay, so the word creativity must be original. Yes. Does everything that's original is creative? Again, almost never. Originality does not guarantee creativity. So it's good because we are getting. So now we're going to speak about creativity. Okay, we'll leave imagination later. We may go here and there to some of the imagination issues, but we are going to talk about creativity as such. So the question is, who is creative? That will be the question. Who is the creator? Okay, can we decide that person is creative and the other one not? Yes, we've seen really people being creative and they are serially creative. Yes, like a serial assassin, a serial creator. Okay, so those people, you know, now, do they have a spatial ability in their brains? We know one thing. Probably they have a disposition. That's to be a creative. Okay, that is what. Remember, there are abilities and disposition. You may have a disposition but not an ability. Now you are a dwarf. Now you want to play basketball, or the other way around. Yes. Now you are 7.5 foot and you hate baseball. You want to play I don't know, marbles. So it doesn't matter. Yeah, you know, I thought something very little with balls. So I thought
difficult.
It's difficult.
You are very tall. When you are 7 foot
very
tall.
Yes, it's quite hard. So what we are talking about here is somebody, that creator, that serial creator is somebody we know has the disposition. And the first question, does he has more abilities than others? Those who are not creators, serial creators. Now, for sure, we may not know the whole, even if we're right, even if it's a spatial ability, some people may have the ability, but again, not the disposition. So they are just not using it. But my claim, and I say it's a claim, I have no proof, I can try to demonstrate, but my claim is that it is not a spatial ability. Everybody is in the range. Of course, some people have 10% better, 10%. I can run. I of course cannot run like a sprint runner. Do you agree, Florencio? I cannot run like a sprint runner. But the distance between me at the age of 20 running and the person who runs at 9 seconds, it's 9 seconds, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
The 100.
9.6 seconds is not that big. There is a, but we are talking about creativity and uncreativity. So
Yeah.
we're not talking about something of a degree. First of all, what do you think about all this, Florencio? Because I've been talking non-stop about it.
No, I like the idea of reducing the conversation at this stage to disruptive innovations that have some impact, not any act of imagination, which can be absolutely dull and repetitive. Of course, not every single piece of original occurrence, because there's so many originality that goes nowhere. But when we get there, I think there is an issue here about acknowledgement, about who, how, and when recognizes certain activities as creative. And as you said, there are people who we identify as being creative in general. Then it's quite easy, because anything that comes out of that individual, we will be prompt to consider creative. Still, it may take time, right? We may be confused about something being or not being truly creative. If someone that's not usually creative comes out with something that I think creative, I think I will usually be suspicious. Maybe he copied, maybe he got it somewhere else. It's not a true innovation. It's just him imitating and pretending. So I think there's an open issue there about how do we identify creativity. And of course, the following question, is this the result of special abilities, or are there other factors in the mix?
The question is it's still pending, because I'm going to answer to what you said, and that's the important thing. I'm going to give 3 examples, so that will make it, or 4 or 5 examples. We have Elon Musk. I don't think there is an argument that the man is creative. Okay,
capable of creating.
Okay. Then you have so it's a person who now has $1 trillion or whatever he has. So his recognition is now. He has 2 kinds of recognitions: everybody clapping, and his bankers' recognition, who loves him dearly and profoundly. Okay, that's a fact. Then you have Tesla. The guy invented many things. It was too early. Some people stole from him. Some others stalled and waited for many years. And today he even has a car factory in his name, even though he died, I think, in abject poverty. Okay, so here you have somebody creative whose recognition came too late. Why his recognition came too late? Because life is that way sometimes, and he was not good at marketing, probably. We don't know. But you can go further down the line, and we can talk about Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a great philosopher. In fact, he became very famous, unfortunately, by the Nazis, who, of course, told stories about his philosophy that wasn't there. The guy was, if he would have been there, he would have been a fervent anti-Nazi. It doesn't matter. He sold, I don't know, 40 books when he was alive. We have Van Gogh. Here you have definitely a creative guy. I mean, we can say a lot of things. The guy was really creative, yes? He was also original. He also cut his ear. I mean, you look, that was not creative. That was original. In the same guy. We can go further down the line to, and since we're talking about some other people, we have Spinoza, the philosopher, who wrote everything, but made sure that nothing was published until he was dead, because he was afraid he was going to be hanged. You have Kafka, who did not know he was as creative as it is, because he says he didn't want to publish, even since his work was published against his will. He wanted to burn his, or in his testament, he said. And then we can even go to somebody who is like incredible, and he was vindicated only 2,500 years later, or 2,200 years, and that's Democritus, the guy who said everything that there is in the universe is atoms, vacuum, and opinions. That's it. That's what there is, and he was right. Only it took 2,200 years. I think it was Rutherford who validated his work, and then he said something that was really incredible. The guy said that there is a sun and all the planets going around it. That was not even known by the time. And not only this sun, there are infinite suns. The numbers are huge, about the same. Stars and planets around it. Now, may I remind you that we discovered planets around other stars, what, 25 years ago? The guy, and what could have been I mean, it's not that the guy was a science, I mean, what he has, a goat. The only thing I think he could foresee for sure is how long will the goat milk will last without a refrigerator that, of course, they don't exist even that. So we get creativity is on the eye of the beholder. That's creativity. It's not the creator is never. It's like if you took the Bible and God there in the Bible, he's the creator, but you know he needs somebody to say, hey, you are the creator, you're great. Everybody in the morning says you are great, you're God, you're fantastic. So that kind of beholder recognition is behind how creative works. And now I will answer. I will continue to what I was saying. What makes people? Are they people, as you say? Have they same ability or not? And I started claiming it. They do. So if everything is so good, why it doesn't work? Why we are not inundated with creativity? The answer is each one of us to use creativity needs to use imagination. And imagination is half of the issue. As I said, I gave the examples. You have social pressures. Yeah. You don't publish your maybe creative. Nobody knows. You keep it to yourself. You keep it to yourself if you are in Iran. Believe me, you keep a lot of things to yourself. In China, where any scientist who makes who proposes an experiment and it fails, he's fired. That's what you are gonna find a lot of science. That's the reason China is what it is, scientifically speaking. So, and then of course, people who are creative in China, imagine we're talking about technology. Imagine in other stuff, they have to shut up. So in every Muslim country, almost saying an atheist, even the realization there is no God, if you publish it, could cost your life. It's a life thing. And then you have religions who will burn you at stake. Ask Mr. Bruno, Giordano Bruno, what he thinks about publishing your creativity. So this is about creativity that the person has and will not make it public. Okay. So those are the limits of creativity. We'll talk about the limits of imaginations, which are very different. What do you think, Florencio, about all this?
I don't know. It's a matter of disposition, might be a matter of difference in ability, but what you are saying is that the main matter here is differences in inhibition, in what external forces limit creativity, or at least the expression of creativity. I think there's a difference there, right? One thing is, as you said, Spinoza, thinking, imagining, creating, and then decided not to go public with that, just keeping it to himself and his closest friends. And then there's the possibility that these same social pressures, these same political risks and inhibition just cut it short before it starts, right? You don't even go there. You don't even start writing or thinking or picturing these scenarios, which are dangerous.
Okay, let's talk about imagination. What is imagination? Okay, we already said imagination happens all the time. Every time we fear something, yes, we dread something, we are imagining. We are imagining. Imagination doesn't have to be, in HD or 4K. Yes, imagination is just a few pixels. That's not enough. That's how we imagine. But the question is, the first thing you have to think is imagination a virtue? Somebody will say yes, the person with a lot of imagination. Really? If life is about averting suffering, and the biggest source of suffering in our life, in our generation, is fear. And in fact, to have fear, you need imagination. Is it a virtue? That means the guy who has the least imagination fears the least. And since fear is the main source of suffering, at least prima facie, looks like not like such a great idea. The problem with imagination, Florencio, is that it's not a decision. Okay? How good is it? It is that I get that you get old. Nothing, but you do. It's not in your hands. I understand. Is it good? It's not good. Is there a positive side? There is no positive side. Believe me, no positive side of getting old. You're old. You're nothing. You just everything is bad, and also you're old. I mean, it's really bad. Can you control it? Oh yeah, sure. Drink 2 vitamins and drink a lot of water. We know you can control it. Same thing with imagination. Most of our imagination emerges. It's not in our hand. Now, please go ahead, Florencio.
No, I was thinking about the examples you gave before in the case of publishing creative work. Just those 2 examples. What we think about in the context of Iran and China, in terms of imagination, I can easily connect these 2 scenarios with guilt and what a religious person might feel, terrible suffering, being a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, just by picturing a certain sinful scenario. There you have immediate pain, suffering out of imagination because of guilt. And there is the Chinese alternative, I think, which is shame. Just putting yourself mentally in a certain situation would make you feel ashamed. So already a broader imagination comes at this risk, right? Fear, as you said, I also think it's the main thing. Fear, but guilt and shame. It's a minefield out there if you start imagining things.
Yes, but remember, the one that it's emergent, you cannot do anything about it.
No.
Okay. So the fact that you are getting old, you're getting old. But in addition to that, you cut yourself an arm, yes, or tie yourself to a tree, then you make things worse. So since part you just imagine it. You just imagine it. I got you to imagine it. So imagination comes from 3 sources: emergent, instigated,
exactly,
and voluntary.
Yeah.
Okay, now creativity does not come from emergent imagination, contrary to whatever people think. That's called inspiration. God gave me the idea. You remember Salieri kissing the cross every time in the movie Amadeus. Every time he got a good note, it's great. It's fantastically done, shown. People think that, and again, all the artists that think that they need to be maybe close to the sea, far from the trees. I don't know what. Sitting in
open to the muses.
It's never sitting in a toilet. Never. You never heard, yes, I need inspiration and sit in a toilet. That they don't say. Yes, or cleaning your flossing your denture. Nobody does that. Yes, that's the way I get inspired. Inspiration for some reason has to be expensive, or
fancy,
or spectacular. Fancy. You're right. Not yes. Spectacularly and fancy, both. So there's no such a thing. It's just a coincidence, and that's what it is. And of course, some people get some ideas, but then you have creativity, then you have imagination that you use, that you call for, and creativity in general comes from that. Now, if I stop imagining all that I can on a voluntary basis, I'm not going to be creative. Am I losing my imagination? No, of course not. All the other part, the emergent one and the instigated one, will continue to be. In fact, you may be with people who do not instigate your imagination. So you don't sit with people who tell jokes that may be problematic. You will not sit with people who tell you something that you don't want to hear. I've been talking about AI on other, the newspapers and so forth, that people denying it all the time because they don't want to imagine the world that AI will come. In fact, even if I want them to imagine something, they get to imagine something else. You can instigate an imagination. What happens to the head of the other guy? We don't know. We never know how that played today, or maybe in a day from now, or a week from now, or a month from now. So the way to avoid suffering from fear
Mm.
is to stop imagining. What I can do? Well, the ones that I can control. Do I do it on purpose? Of course not. It's automatic. If I burn myself with a fire when I'm a child, I will never get close to my hand if I don't need to do it every time. It's already, I don't even think about it. I don't say, I should not put my hand there because I'm going to get burned.
It's an interesting turn of events to end up thinking that maybe those forces inhibiting imagination and creativity are sparing us some suffering. Because usually you would think that's a terrible thing to try and somehow reduce the field of imagination. But if it is a minefield, if it is a source of additional suffering, maybe it's not such a bad idea to be in a situation where imagination is constrained and reduced.
Well, you know, we sometimes do this on a temporary basis. Before I go to sleep, I will never read something that is terrible. I will never read about the Holocaust. I will never read. Okay, so I may decide in which time I control, because remember, you have one imagination you cannot control at all, which is your dreams. Yes? And this is the reason I believe everybody has imagination. The difference between the most dreamy person and the ones that the dreams are very little. So, you know, if you have the ability to dream almost as anybody else, really, is it really an ability, or it is really more of something that does not stop me? And remember, we'll never know if not imagining stop the pain, because you're not doing it. It becomes in itself a counterfactual. A counterfactual, I'm sorry, in English.
We're out of time. I guess we'll never know. But there are many good questions arising from this video.
Well, but to a conclusion, to make it clear, I think people do have the ability to be creative because they do have all access to imagination, about the same, not different. And the main reason is mysalgia, is averting suffering, is what makes people not being creative. And you know, finally, I will tell something else. We don't need more creative people. We have enough. Creativity, I believe that with 8 billion people, we really, and the internet, being able to transmit an idea from one. I mean, if we cannot do it with 8 billion people, we should go home. Home. There is no home.
Amazing. See you next time.
Until next time.
Have a good one.
If you enjoyed the video, please like it, comment and subscribe.